First of all, the president here, Nick Ladani, has this healthy disgruntlement with higher education. And so I think if you look at the outcomes, 4, 5, and 6 year graduation rates in the United States, they're around 60%. And what does that mean? That means 40% of the students who enter higher education are leaving with no degree and debt. And 60% is a failing grade. You wouldn't get on an airplane that 40% of the time left you stranded and took your money. And that's what's happening to millions and millions of students in the United States. So let's start there. Those outcomes are really bad. And then if you dig into that 40% who's leaving with no degree in debt, who is it? It's the first generation Pell eligible underrepresented student who is already at risk. And now we're putting them in this situation where they're even further behind. And so what are we trying to do as a challenger brand? We're trying to, shine a light on that demographic and that statistic and say this.
Hi, I'm Anna Young from Sunnyside Literacy Lab, and you're listening to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And we would like to share 2 wonderful opportunities for educators, policymakers, advocates, and scholars to engage in community. First is with our EdUp Accelerated Excellence Listening Tour, because we fundamentally believe that by listening to others, we empower the engine of transformation, unlocking the hidden insights that spark meaningful change. This week, listen to a voice that you often don't hear from to seek out new insights about educational excellence or equity, and share your thoughts via voicemail at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com. And your thoughts may be shared on air through this podcast. That's the XE listening tour at edupxe.com. In addition, deans, directors, and faculty of educator preparation programs, we invite you to submit nominations for outstanding future teachers for the Accelerated Excellence Future Teacher Award. Research informs us that teaching is one of the most rewarding professions and one upon which all others are dependent. So help us in elevating educator preparation by nominating an outstanding future teacher for the Accelerated Excellence Future Teacher Award 2025-2026. Find more details in the show notes. This episode is supported in part by Patriox Ultra High Oxygen Content Water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code EdUpXE. That's 10% off with the code EdUpXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast where we seek to advance educational excellence and equity. And I'm your host, Jacob Easley, the second PhD PMP. And today's guest is Dr. Brad Fuster, who is Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at San Francisco Bay University and is host of one of the remarkable podcasts of the EdUp Experience Network. He hosts EdUp Innovation. So, Brad, welcome to the show. Would you introduce yourself to the audience by giving voice to your name and just give us a 35 aerial perspective on what's top of mind for you currently?
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, thank you. Good morning. It's 7 a.m. on the West Coast here. So I'm up bright and early talking to you on Friday here. And yeah, I have the privilege of serving as provost at San Francisco Bay University. I'm coming up on 2 years here in the role. I love being in Silicon Valley. I love all of the innovative things that we're trying at San Francisco Bay University. And that sort of people like you and others on the EdUp Experience platform have inspired me to start the EdUp Innovation podcast. And I don't really care if people listen. I'm having so much fun having these great conversations with innovative leaders, university presidents, faculty, staff, administrators, who are doing really innovative things in a space and in a time where higher ed is struggling, continues to struggle, and innovation is the way forward. So it's a passion project for me. I love having these conversations. It forces me to read things I wouldn't otherwise read, or have conversations with folks I wouldn't otherwise prioritize making time to talk to. And it's just been such a blessing and such a rich experience for me.
So, Brad, thank you for that. To kick us off with this, I'm just going to throw this out there, but do you have a working definition for innovation?
Yeah, that's a tough one right out of the gate here at 7 a.m., Jacob. It's probably not going to be so elegant, but for me, I really think about, with innovation hand in hand, I think about disruption. I think about, and if you go back to kind of Clay Christensen's work and his, disruptive innovation book, I think about where you have 4,000 universities who are all pretty much doing the same thing in the same way, where we have a 4-year undergraduate experience that has a cycle with the kind of crop cycle where students go to school from September through May in semesters, and they take classes in units of 3 credits, and they hit 120 and then they graduate. They all pretty much take the same kind of general education, whether you're at Harvard or whether you're at a local community college. And then, that system and that structure in 2026 is not really serving students as well as it could. So to me, innovation in higher education is when somebody looks at that structure and says, we're going to smash all of that down. The tenure system, the college schedule, the credit structure, and we're going to actively try and build something different. We're going to disrupt the current model. And if you think about like what the digital camera did to Kodak, or if you think about what Netflix did to Blockbuster, those are the types of disruption and innovation that I'm seeking to shine a spotlight on in higher education. And it's the work that we're trying to do at San Francisco Bay University. So long-winded, but for me, I think innovation is really when you have a disruptor in the system who's actively trying to improve outcomes and do things in a radically different way.
Well, thank you for that. So not long-winded, because I think the context and painting a picture is important for our conversation today. So we're going to go backwards a bit and then come forward to really to explore this idea of innovation. So you began your career as a music professor and a professional musician, so in orchestral work. How exciting is that? But what initially drew you to music, and how did that discipline shape the way you think about leadership and creativity?
Wow, great questions. Yeah, I was a music professor. I was an orchestral percussionist. All 3 of my degrees, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, are in percussion performance, which is not the typical pathway to a provost position or to leadership. And that's certainly, if you go back to 18-year-old me, I just wanted to play music. I just wanted to play in an orchestra. I had a very long and successful career as an orchestral musician, playing with orchestras, in Hollywood and really all over the world, touring all over the world. And, eventually I became a music professor. In 1999, I got a full-time tenure track position at Montana State University and worked there for 6 years. And during that time, I became the interim music department chair, and the chair went on sabbatical, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. I can help shape the curriculum. I can fix some things that I see that will serve students. And then I sought my own music department chair position at Buffalo State University in 2005. And that was a really unique opportunity because we got to form the department sort of from scratch. It was a performing arts department that was music, theater, and dance all smashed together. Everything was growing at the time. So they hired a full-time chair of music. And so I was chair there for 9 years. And I think in that role, I really honed my leadership ability. I was kind of a young professional, associate professor of music, playing full-time in the Buffalo Philharmonic, working full-time at Buffalo State University. And then after 9 years in the chair position, the president kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, the guy who does enrollment management left. Would you like to be the interim AVP of enrollment management? Because you grew the music department, maybe you could help us grow the whole university. So I sat for a year in that role, and that concluded, and I thought I'd go back to music. But then she tapped me on the shoulder again and said, hey, our vice president and chief technology officer left. Would you like to be the CIO? So, okay, now I'm, on the president's cabinet in an interim capacity. And then I thought, I'm probably not going back to music. It was an organic kind of journey into higher ed leadership. I then did an ACE fellowship, which I highly recommend. It's a great program that gave me a year to really explore what leadership in higher ed looks like and what it means and what would be the right fit for me. And then eventually in 2018, transitioned to become provost at Keuka College and stopped teaching music and eventually had to stop playing music and just kind of moved into full-time leadership. So I was provost at Keuka from 2018 to 2025. So a 6-year run there through the pandemic, which was tough for lots of schools and especially that school. And then 2 years ago, came out here to San Francisco to join the mission of being a disruptor and, actively trying to fix some of the things that I think all of us who work here see in higher ed that are not really serving students as well as they could. To be that Netflix, to be that digital camera, to really try and disrupt the model. And we're doing some great work here, and I'm having a blast, and I'm certainly learning a lot, continue to learn a lot. And so that's been the leadership arc from kind of musician, music professor into full-time academic leadership.
So, Brad, it really sounds like your role at Buff State, being a chair of that department, really was sort of that entree into these big ideas around innovation.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's the role I was in the longest. I've been in higher ed 26 years, and that 9-year run as chair at Buffalo State, I certainly learned a lot, had great colleagues. Really have a lot of love for that program, still in touch with those folks, and really got to try some things, and find my leadership voice. So yeah, that was a very pivotal position for me.
And, it's really a unique position because you're in a position to create something from the ground up, which many leaders don't have the opportunity.
That's right.
As you mentioned, your provost tapped you to step into roles that already existed, right, within the existing infrastructure. I'm sure you continue to innovate in that way, but could you illuminate for us, what is it like to come in and be able to create programming from the ground up?
Yeah. So I've had that opportunity twice in my career. Once was when I came to Buffalo State and we had to kind of form the music department. And I think that really prepared me for this role as provost at San Francisco Bay University, where, literally nothing really existed here when I came. We're a new brand, a new university. We've only been around as San Francisco Bay for like 5 years. The president's been here 3 years. I've been here 2 years. I hired all of the faculty here. I hired every single faculty member I had to hire. We rewrote the catalog. We rewrote the student handbook. Literally every operational policy we have has been rewritten. So that is daunting, my friend. That is, in one way, it seems like a dream, right? Because you get to put your stamp and fix a lot of the nonsense that perpetuates in higher ed. On the other hand, it is daunting because when I first got here, I was thinking, okay, how should we structure? Well, we'll have departments, and the departments will have chairs, and the chairs will report to deans, and the deans will report to me. I'm like, wait a minute, this is we're just rebuilding the same system because it's all I knew. And so to kind of use some design thinking and work backwards and think like, what are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to serve students, and what structures will serve students the best? And, you know, how can we kind of rebuild this airplane, by the way, while we're flying in it, to really have a structure that will serve students the best. And so we have a very flat structure. We do not have tenure. We do have shared governance, but it's not through a formal committee structure. It's, I meet with the department chairs here, and we talk about what changes we want to make or how we can better serve students, and then we execute immediately. We don't study it for 10 years and send it to committees to debate. And I can give you some examples. We were in here in my office meeting on a Friday, and our librarian said, look, 70% of the books that we're using are available through free subscriptions from our databases. And so I asked the chairs, what would it take to get the other 30%? And they're like, we can do this. So we decided on a Friday, SFBU will have free textbooks for all students. And then on Monday, when I kind of walked to work, we have a big one of those digital signs in front of the building, and there was free textbooks. So like decide on a Friday that we can do free textbooks, and on Monday, there's a billboard that says, come to SFBU, we have free textbooks. That's how quickly we can make a decision and execute on it. And especially one that really serves students. So I love that agility. I love working with my chairs and faculty to make rapid decisions that will benefit students.
I'm speaking with Brad Fuster, who is the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at San Francisco Bay University and the host of EdUp Innovation, a podcast, part of the EdUp Experience Network. So, Brad, this idea of being able to, in your current position, to produce right on time innovation, so this sort of rapid iteration of new ideas. I think that serves really well in very new places, and as you said, a flat structure. And I'm going to have you to think out a bit. When your institution grows exponentially in terms of students and faculty, how do you think you'll be able to maintain that rapid innovation and in real time when often the process becomes, and I don't want to say bureaucratic, but you have to work through different channels to be able to implement. So as you grow larger, how does one think about scale and at the same time maintain some of that unique features of being able to implement pretty much on a dime?
Yeah. It's a multi-million-dollar question, Jacob. You asked the tough questions. Right now, our size, which is small, allows us to be very agile, very nimble, very responsive. The governance structure, even when we scale, will not change, right? So that kind of making collective decisions, we're not going to put a big, cumbersome committee structure in place. We're going to continue to kind of lead by consensus and move forward very rapidly. Another answer to the question of scale is AI. We are an AI first institution. We have AI built in from the bottom up. When you asked before, how do you approach the blank page and start from scratch? many universities now are realizing this technology that's emerged is the future, and in many cases the fourth industrial revolution, right? And if we're graduating students who don't know how to work with AI, we're graduating students who are not prepared to succeed in the workplace. And so what are universities doing? They're bolting AI onto existing curriculum. We built AI in from the bottom. Like when we redesign courses, we've embedded AI in multiple meaningful ways into our curriculum. So assignments are telling students, use ChatGPT to do this, use Claude to do that, and don't use it for these things. We also have an AI tutor that rides along with the classes that the students can have conversations with at night. We learn in real time what they're struggling with, what they're doing well with. And so our ability to kind of scale, that is what we're working on now actively, is launching a degree that's completely online that has AI faculty avatars built into the class. And so we think that are trained in our pedagogical model. So we think in terms of scale, scale doesn't necessarily mean more humans in the loop. And as we serve more and more students, I think we're experimenting with how can we use artificial intelligence to give students a really human-centered, meaningful education to maximize the work of the faculty. So we want to grow, we're going to grow, but we're going to do it with technology. And I don't know that we're going to have a much larger workforce than we currently have. So I think the rapid decisions that we can make shouldn't be tremendously affected as we serve more and more students.
I definitely see the design logic, and this idea of being able to integrate or build with AI from the ground up is definitely a treasured position to be in. So again, I think there's some uniqueness in being able to develop from the ground up. So now serving in your role as Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs at San Francisco Bay University. The university describes itself as a challenger brand disruptor in higher education. So you alluded to this before, but what attracted you to the position? And can you unpack this concept of challenger brand in higher education for your university?
Yeah. Well, there's a million attractive things about working at San Francisco Bay University. First of all, the president here, Nick Danny, has this healthy disgruntlement with higher education. And so I think if you look at the outcomes, 4, 5, and 6 year graduation rates in the United States, they're around 60%. And what does that mean? That means 40% of the students who enter higher education are leaving with no degree and debt. And 60% is a failing grade. You wouldn't get on an airplane that, 40% of the time left you stranded and took your money. And that's what's happening to millions and millions of students in the United States. So let's start there. Those outcomes are really bad. And then if you dig into that 40% who's leaving with no degree and debt, who is it? It's the first generation Pell eligible underrepresented student who is already at risk. And now we're putting them in this situation where they're even further behind. And so what are we trying to do as a challenger brand? We're trying to shine a light on that demographic and that statistic and say, this higher ed is unacceptable. And then B, we're going to put some things in place at San Francisco Bay that really endeavors to serve that student in a different way. And so if you think about challenger brands, just in stuff that you and I buy every day, Airbnb is a challenger because it disrupted the hotel industry. Some people prefer to stay in a house when they travel, or to stay in an apartment and not stay at a Marriott. Airbnb is not trying to replace Marriott. It's trying to serve a piece of the market that's currently underserved or unserved by the current model. They're not trying to be the biggest in the vertical. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, look, we're surrounded by Berkeley in the north and Stanford in the south of us. We're not trying to compete with Berkeley and Stanford. Those R1s have their place and they're great at what they do. But we know that there are millions of students in California and nationally who are not served by the current model because the data suggests that 40% of the students are leaving. We want those students. And we argue that if with the structures and decisions that we've made here, mandatory faculty training, classes capped at 20, AI tutors riding on board, super low tuition, free textbooks, wraparound support and unlimited mental health support. Those investments are really, really serving students in a way that many community colleges and other state institutions are not able to provide. And so we want to be that option for students. And as I mentioned earlier when we were talking off camera, we have an awful lot of international students. We have students here from 45 different countries. And then increasingly now more domestic students, largely from California. Our population is first generation, definitely Pell eligible, underrepresented students from largely Oakland or San Jose, our neighbors in Silicon Valley. Those are students who traditionally either wouldn't go to college, or if they did go to college, maybe would graduate in the 20% to 25% range, which is, again, completely unacceptable. Our fall to spring retention for the entire university was 99.76%. So we retain pretty much 100% of our students, and students that are in a demographic where, most other universities are really struggling to put things in place that allows those students to really thrive and succeed. So our initial data would suggest that the bets that we've made, the investments that we've made are really paying off for these students. And that is what is supremely attractive about the work that we're doing at San Francisco Bay University. And I think what we're showing here is not just like, look how great we are. It's proof of concept that these investments can be made at other institutions and like we can serve as a model so that many other institutions can make some of the moves that we've made and increase their retention and success rates.
So a near 100% retention rate is really, that's astounding. It
is. Yeah.
This episode is supported in part by Patriox Ultra High Oxygen Content Water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code AddUpXE. That's 10% off with the code AddUpXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. All of this innovation happening, we don't want folks to believe that everything's amazing and great. What have been one or two of the significant challenges you have faced as being a challenger brand disruptor?
Yeah. So, when I talk to my friends and colleagues in higher ed and I tell them about, the work we're doing here, we have this big financial runway to take the risks that we're taking, not even really risks, experiments. And we have WASC accreditation, which are like the two biggest things you need. You need money and you need accreditation. And then you need the political will, right? You need a president who's saying, we will serve these students and we will invest. They think like, you must be on Mars because like how is this even possible? And I listened to the challenges. I was just at the ACE conference, a month ago, and I listened to the challenges in the sector. There's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. that is really challenging higher. We're not affected. We don't take Title IV funds. We use our own funding. We don't do research, so we're not reliant on federal grants. I think the challenges we have are largely, at least from a political standpoint, because we have a lot of international students. I saw an email go out yesterday saying, we advise you not to leave for spring break. We advise you to stay here because the political landscape is so dynamic and the F1 visas are so fragile right now that if you're in the United States, stay in the United States. And attracting students from overseas to study here right now is like at an all-time, like we are about as unattractive as a nation as you could be. I would not come here if I was an international student. It's just extremely hostile. So the F1 visa situation is a challenge for us. I also think kind of the startup nature of what we're doing. When I came, there were like 25 employees a year and a half ago, and now we're approaching 200 employees. So 10x growth in a year and a half. That's painful. Like to lead through that speed and level of change is a challenge, and it's a fast-paced, kind of messy environment. You have to thrive in ambiguity. We change directions on a dime. Higher ed is not used to that. And so when you hire people out of traditional higher ed, they think they're joining a university that's going to be the same experience that they've had where, decisions are deliberated over and slow moving. And that is not that you will not thrive in this. So, when I started, I had no admin assistant. I was setting up searches. I was ordering lunch. I was working all night. I was doing what you do in a startup environment. And startup and higher ed are not. It's rare you have a startup in higher ed. And so, if you're able to thrive in that environment, that's great. If you're not able to thrive in that environment, it's hard to hire the right employees here who are gonna thrive in kind of the chaos of working in such a fast-paced environment.
You bring up a really interesting point. So this idea of traditional higher ed and startup mentality don't always, it's like oil and water. They don't.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
They don't gel so well. So when you think about hiring folks, are you finding that folks are jumping ship from other universities, or are you reaching out or mining the landscape for perhaps untraditional community members who may not have taken the traditional higher ed route, working in traditional higher ed, but maybe innovators in their own disciplines and workspaces? Yeah,
great questions, Jacob. It's a bit of both, to be honest. We're so in Silicon Valley, we're surrounded by the biggest and the best companies in the world. And some of our faculty have spent most of their time in industry, and they've kind of made all their money, and they're a little bit burned out on the pace and the schedule of working for Google or Apple. Nothing against Google or Apple. I use both products every day. But they're ready to teach. They want to change. And a lot of us folks have spent time in industry. Maybe they were an adjunct and they're like, you know what? Like, I love students. I love teaching students. Like, that's the person I want to hire. Somebody who, brings tremendous amount of industry expertise, probably has a PhD, has managed, hundreds of people in their organization. And they're like, you know what? I really want to give back now in my 50s and 60s. I'm ready to enter a new chapter of my life, and I want to teach. I've hired a lot of people who kind of come from that background. I've hired a few from traditional higher ed, who are folks like me, and the others who are a little slightly disgruntled with higher ed and want to make a change. And when I'm so passionate about the work we're doing here, and now that we're actually having some really tangible results, I speak about that, and that fires people up. And so, just yesterday, I was in San Jose, 8:00 in the morning. I was talking to 42 high school guidance counselors from at the Metro Ed district. This is a place where kids go to their high school for half the day, and then they come to this place and they learn things like welding or HVAC or med tech. And I was saying, look, we have these great programs in business, computer science, psychology, super low tuition, in some cases free. We have a startup scholars program that I can talk to you about. Those students don't pay any tuition. They don't pay any room or board. Everybody gets free books. They get a laptop, and they get $10,000 to found a passion project. project when they graduate. Perfect for these students who like working with their hands and like, so I was talking to these high school guidance counselors, pretty much similar conversation to what we're having this morning, you and I, and at the end, 2 or 3 of the guidance counselors came up to me and they said, "Are you hiring guidance counselors? Like, are you hiring advisors and counselors? Because I love what you're saying and I love the work you're doing." And so I think now that we have this proof of concept and we're having such good results, it's going to be magnetic. It's going to attract the talent that is organically aligned with our mission and the work we're doing. So it gets easier now that we've stood up our programs, we've put critical mass in place, and it's going to attract the right talent to the organization. So it's a little bit easier now. A year ago, it was very difficult to say, like, this is the vision. We don't have anybody working here yet. Come join me, and we'll do this together. But yeah, I mean, we made some great hires, and some early adopters jumped on with the work we're doing. And I'm so thankful to have the team around me that I have.
That makes sense. I mean, and what you're talking about now is having folks who want to come join you and you have to turn them away, or, you're having your programs growing exponentially. I had an advisor once who would call those better problems.
Yeah, those are great problems. That's right. Yeah.
So we're going to shift a bit, if you don't mind, and talk about EdUp innovation.
Yeah.
So the podcast, which amplifies voices of leaders and disruptors in higher education. And given your current role, I can see how this is. There's a red line that seems to make sense from your aptitude and your passion for this space as a disruptor and the guests that you bring on the show. So what inspired you to start the show?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. So when I moved from upstate New York to San Francisco 2 summers ago, I had a rickety U-Haul truck with my stuff in the back, and I drove for 5 days across the United States. And I decided I'm just going to listen to podcasts, right? You've got 15 hours a day of drive time, not great radio reception. And so I'm just going to scroll through podcasts. And I found the EdUp experience, right? With Joe and Elvin. I found, I think, your podcast. I found Nicole Poff, who does EdUp curriculum, Lori Shanderson, who does EdUp accreditation. And I just, like, for days and days burned through these episodes, driving my truck, across Kansas. And I thought, gosh, this seems like so much fun. Like I could do this. I could figure out how to do this. But I was ironically a little bit intimidated by the tech. I didn't want to spend like hours editing, and I knew I didn't have that kind of time to dedicate. But I love the idea of it. So anyway, I got here, I started doing the work, and then was invited on podcasts to speak. And I hadn't ever been a podcast guest. So I went on Nicole's show. I did EdUp Provost with Gregor, my friend, Gregor, and, I don't know, maybe half a dozen other podcasts, some mostly on the EdUp platform, some not on the EdUp platform, and had a blast. And then actually started talking with Nicole and Gregor, and said, like, how hard is this to do? What does this look like? They introduced me to Elvin, and I sort of pitched to him, like, what about EdUp innovation? I'm doing all this work. I'd love to kind of connect with other people who are doing innovative things in higher ed, and learn from them and shine a spotlight on them and celebrate them. And Elvin was like, yeah, do it. Here's how you do it. And it was all over email. Elvin's sending me these, like, go to Spotify, create this account, send me the password, do this, upload an image, record a trailer. And it happened like overnight, and boom, EdUp innovation was born. And so I made this dream list of, here are the guests I'd love to have. Principal amongst them were people like Ben Nelson, founder of Minerva University, Paula Blanc, from Southern New Hampshire, Michael Crow, people who kind of launched hyperscale institutions, but also smaller and lesser known people who are doing really innovative things. I wanted to find them and also celebrate them. And so kind of one by one, I reached out to them, and they're like, yeah, Brad, I'd love to come on your show. I would love to do this. And so Ben was generous enough to be my first guest, and I and I really didn't know what I was doing. You know, this microphone I had turned around this way so that the sound was super terrible, and recorded the whole episode with awful audio. And my son, Max, he was a music technology major at Temple. Shout out to Max. Anyway, Max is a music technology major. And I said, listen, dude, I need you to edit my podcast. I need you to put some music and some graphics. And when people screw up, I need you to slice it out. And he's like, yeah, Dad, I can do that. And he said, do you think you can pay me? And I said, I love that you're asking. And also, I'm going to remind you that I pay your rent in New York City. And so if you don't want to be homeless and living under a bridge, you will edit my podcast for free. So he does, and I'm super thankful. And so I just get to do the fun part. I just get to kind of have the conversations and ship it off to him, and he makes it look pretty, and then we throw it up on Spotify. And I don't, I'm not trying to make any money. I'm not trying to monetize. I'm doing this because it's a passion for me. It's forcing me to read things I wouldn't read. It's forcing me to have conversations with folks that I admire that I wouldn't otherwise carve out time at 7 a.m. to do. So I love it. It is my passion project, and I'm so thankful to Elvin and Joe, for helping me launch it.
I think we have similar stories there. And Elvin is really quick pace. Yeah. You should do it.
Do this. Yeah.
And actually, Elvin was the one that encouraged me to start my podcast. We used to work together, and when he and Joe started EdUp, he was like, "You should do a podcast." I said, "Elvin, I really like the idea. I appreciate it. I understand, and this is something that I think would be interesting for me." But I said, I don't have the time.
Right.
It took a few years to get into this space, but I also appreciate the bad audio, because you can understand that starting at a startup institution, really, and starting a division or a unit in your prior work, is that a lot of it is just paper clips and rubber bands.
That's right.
The passion and goodwill, and folks are figuring things out. So you have to give yourself a bit of grace.
Thank you.
Process at the same time.
That's right.
So you've interviewed, as you mentioned, many leaders from across higher education. Have there been conversations that have fundamentally changed the way you think about innovation? And can you shed a light on any of those?
Yeah. I mean, so many, I learn from every conversation I have, right? It's every conversation on EdUp innovation is a gift to me. And I take something from everyone I've spoken with. And in some cases, I've been so blessed that some of these folks are truly my heroes. Like, I've been following Ben Nelson since 2010. Like, I remember sitting in my kitchen in Buffalo, like, learning this guy is going to found this tech giant is going to found a university from scratch, and he's going to teach students all over the world, and they're going to have multiple campuses, and they're going to start and end in San Francisco. So, like, literally for 15 years, I've been following this guy's career. And I really do admire him and the vision to found Minerva. So that very first conversation really set the tone for everything that was going to follow. I've also learned a lot from Strazi Kulinski. He's the president at New U University in Washington, D.C. And Strazi really pushed for 3-year degrees. He was the one, we talked earlier about the teaching university students with the rotation of the crop cycle. Why are we still doing this? And he said, look, we can shave 25% off the time to completion. You'll have better success rates, better opportunity, to get into the market, lower the risk. And so we're doing that too at San Francisco Bay University. We were one of the first universities approved in California to offer 90 credit degrees. So we, our bachelors have a 120 credit pathway and a 90 credit pathway. So I've learned a lot from Strazi. Brian Rosenberg, who wrote the book, Whatever It Is, I'm Against It, Change Resistance in Higher Education. I love that book. and I heard him speak at a few conferences. And I loved my conversation with him because he lived through the very traditional academia where, he was president at Macalester for like 18 years. And he was able to move forward in a very change-resistant system. And so talking about change resistance and how to punch through change resistance to still get things done and serve students, that was a really rewarding conversation. But really I love every episode. I re-listen to because I don't know if you do that too. I like hear things that, God, he was making that point. That's amazing. Next time I talk to him or her, I'm gonna have that conversation. So yeah, it's really been just so wonderful for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. So the podcast in some ways is an ongoing lesson for the host, for sure. And as you mentioned, yes, your son does behind the scenes editing, but you have to prep for those interviews.
It's true. Yeah.
Reading things that you probably hadn't read before.
Right.
Thinking about exactly what is it that you want to nurture in that conversation, that 35, 45 minutes. Some folks have longer podcasts. But you mentioned, as you were talking about the 90 credit degree or 3-year degree, it made me think about, in the back of my mind, another argument that's happening between college for work and college for individual and I would say or community enlightenment and uplift.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on thinking about this world of innovation? Because I think in some ways that we're thinking about college for work, that fundamentally changes how we think about higher ed.
Right.
It doesn't get at the point that I actually love learning. I love continuous growth. And I think almost all institutions want students to be lifelong learners.
Of course.
I feel that. So how do you balance that between development and transformation for an individual and their communities and this idea of college for work?
Yeah, great question, Jacob. So at SFBU, listen, we sit in the middle of Silicon Valley. Our degree portfolio is very narrow. We have degrees in business, computer science, data science, electrical engineering, business analytics. Like it's a very tight, almost polytechnic type portfolio. We are expanding. We are adding psychology next year, and we're going to continue to kind of mushroom out to maybe a dozen or so degree options, but we're not going to have 80 degree options like many universities. We're just going to have kind of about a dozen, and they are all kind of career oriented in nature. That being said, I also think that we must graduate students who are lifelong learners, and the conversation around kind of learning for the sake of learning to create passionate lifelong learners versus learning for career preparation. I don't think it should be a both and solution. And the tack that we've taken at SFBU, again, we had this blank slate so we could do whatever we wanted. Here's what we did. If you look at the general education requirements at most undergraduate institutions, they are the typical liberal arts and sciences distribution model, where you have a category for arts and a category for social science and natural science and math and writing and blah, blah, blah. And to the high school student coming in, it looks like just more of what they did for the last 4 years, right? Oh, okay, I'm taking chemistry, I'm taking history, I'm taking, political science, I'm taking statistics, I'm taking math. And they don't really see, it's like a jigsaw puzzle where they just get little pieces, but they don't see the picture on the cover of the box that they're trying to put together. That was the general education I had at a very good liberal arts school. Probably you too, you're shaking your head. And maybe when I was 35, I realized, oh my gosh, like this is how these things fit together. This is the picture on the cover of the box. This is why I read the Peloponnesian War. This is why, this is why I read Thucydides, is because it'll help me make meaning out of the world we're living in. It also taught me how to read, study, and love learning. Not every student makes that connection. I became a professor. Like I'm a rare breed. Most students just go on and they become a data analyst and they're like, well, archaeology or anthropology, that was a total waste of time. The general education we built here endeavors to teach durable skills. And it's not a distribution model where students pick from a menu. It's 10 courses that were designed as a suite of 10 courses, and students take every single course, and they all go together, and there's a through line intentionally designed throughout, and they all have how-to titles so that the outcome is super explicit to the student. It's right in the title of the class. How to tell your story, how to be creative with AI, how math works in the real world, how your brain works, how to lead, how to make social impact. These are the titles of the classes, and they're purposefully interdisciplinary. And so we weave in the liberal arts as context for the explicit outcome that we want. So when you're taking how to lead, you're also learning about history. When you take how to tell your story, you're also learning about writing. When you take how to design your life, you're also learning about philosophy. And so the liberal arts are there, but they're there in the context of these are the durable skills that we want you to have when you go out into the real world. And so we asked 45 of our neighbors, Google, Apple, Tesla, Meta, the biggest and the best companies in the world, Amazon, FedEx, what's important to you when you hire an employee? And we heard things like, they need to know how to communicate and communicate in a global context. They need to know leadership. They need to be resilient. They need to be tenacious. These are the characteristics that we heard. And so we made those the learning outcomes of our general education. So for us, like, to balance, back to your question, higher ed for job preparation or higher ed for kind of lifelong learning, the solution is in the general education if you have the ability to design one from scratch that threads the needle for the student.
So, Brett, I definitely appreciate that. And I think that in itself is an innovation.
For sure. Yeah.
I would bet that most students would tell you they struggle with, well, let's put it this way. They may not struggle outright, but I think it's hard pressed to go into a classroom and on a regular routine basis have faculty be able to articulate how the course you took last semester connects to what you're in this course.
100%.
So we see that in traditional, we even see it in doctoral programs, we see it across gen ed.
Yeah.
Where you probably are less likely to see it are usually in technical programs.
Right. That's right.
The technical skills build one on another. But outside of those type of programs, you're spot on. Oftentimes it's left to the student to make those kind of
piece together the puzzle
together.
Yeah.
Or when you get to your senior project, but you're working on a particular topic, and your advisor then helps you to make connections.
Right.
But it's not until that late in the game. And I really, I think it's quite sexy that the titles of your courses are quite...
It is sexy. It is a sexy curriculum. It's called the Agility Praxis Pathway. That's the title of the gen ed. So APP, all the courses are APP 101, APP 102. And that is what we want. We want the students to have praxis, a practical experience. These are, again, limited to 20 students, highly experiential. So if you were to peek into one of those classrooms for any one of those classes, what you're going to see is not a lecture. You're going to see students up, writing on whiteboards, writing on sticky notes, talking with an AI chatbot, creating their own podcasts, working in groups, out in the field. We took them all to Muir Woods and we went through the redwoods and they were journaling. You're going to see highly experiential teaching and learning in those spaces by design. And you're right, that through line is totally absent in the typical higher ed undergraduate experience. If you're teaching, political science 101, you have no idea what that student took before they came to your classroom. Maybe math is about the only sequential, like in order to take Calc 2, you probably should have taken Calc 1 and before that algebra. And so, math is a very kind of linear sequential curriculum. But everything else is a mess. And our curriculum is designed to really curate a learning experience for the student. And there's a capstone at the end of the gen ed. And so when they graduate, they have to synthesize everything that they learned in the first 9 classes and actually launch a social movement and do something that has a social impact and measure it. So we believe this is the right approach to kind of guide students through the undergraduate experience so that when they graduate, they're both job ready and they're lifelong learners. They're great citizens. They really got a holistic experience here.
So I just realized that we're having an interdisciplinary conversation. We were talking about your podcast, EdUp Innovation, and we went right back into describing the sexy curriculum.
Yeah. That's going to be the subtitle now, the Agility Praxis Pathway, quote, the sexy curriculum, close quote, Jacob Easley II. I'm going to change the website immediately.
I love it. Well, it definitely draws some new eyes. Thank you for tuning into EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And we would like to share 2 wonderful opportunities for educators, policymakers, advocates, and scholars to engage in community. First is with our EdUp Accelerated Excellence Listening Tour, because we fundamentally believe that by listening to others, we empower the engine of transformation, unlocking the hidden insights that spark meaningful change. This week, listen to a voice that you often don't hear from to seek out new insights about educational excellence or equity, and share your thoughts via voicemail at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com. And your thoughts may be shared on air through this podcast. That's the XE Listening Tour at edupxe.com. In addition, deans, directors, and faculty of educator preparation programs, we invite you to submit nominations for Outstanding Future Teachers for the Accelerated Excellence Future Teacher Award. Research informs us that teaching is one of the most rewarding professions and one upon which all others are dependent. So help us in elevating educator preparation by nominating an outstanding future teacher for the Accelerated Excellence Future Teacher Award 2025-2026. Find more details in the show notes. We're speaking with Brad Fuster, who is Provost and Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at San Francisco Bay University, and he is the host of EdUp Innovation Podcast. So, Brad, for younger scholars or junior scholars who might be listening, and they want to become change agents in higher education, what advice would you give to them?
I would challenge some of the assumptions that are built into the machinery. And I can, if again, I'm going to circle back to Brian Rosenberg's book, Whatever It Is, I'm Against It, Change Resistance in Higher Ed. Higher Ed has systems that reward change resistance, right? Like there's actually mechanisms in higher ed that are meant to prevent change. And so to the junior scholar out there, if you're at a university and you see a way that you can serve students that is kind of outside the norm, whether that is through like a living learning community or through any means to kind of create multiple meaningful relationships with students, if there's an opportunity to change the distribution of your portfolio with teaching, research, and service, I would encourage you to have those conversations with the leaders at your institutions. And also, every university has a Center for Teaching and Learning, right? And that is usually a very safe space for folks to have kind of radically new ideas and bounce around, new concepts in teaching and learning. And so if you're teaching a class that is the typical 16 chapter textbook where you teach a chapter a week and you just read from the slides and it's lecture, 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 lecture. One thing you do have is academic freedom. And so get rid of that textbook, get rid of that yellow legal pad from graduate school that has your lecture notes, and try and engage students in a way where they are agents of their own learning. Students are not empty vessels into which we pour knowledge and they consume it. That's how I learned, Jacob. When you went to university, that's probably how you learned. That is not how learners are approaching their education in 2026. They have the entirety of the world of knowledge in the palm of their hands on their phone. So what you need to do is not really provide content. It's to provide a learning experience in which students can thrive and learn their own content. And that is a radical shift in the way knowledge has been transferred. Right? When I went to school, I listened to the professor lecture. I wrote down important things. I went to the library, read books about it, quoted those books in papers, submitted the paper to the professor as evidence of, hey, I've learned something from your class. He graded the paper. I learned from that. We moved on to the next class. That is 100% like medieval technology. And we should not be teaching that way anymore. And so because you have academic freedom, find ways to not do that anymore. Find ways to get the students off their butts, out of their chairs, actively engaging in activities that create curiosity for them, that force them to consume something that they wouldn't otherwise have read or understood, or become curious about something, whatever it is, whether it's politics or music or education, whatever the topic is. Spark that curiosity through an experiential learning moment that you've created for.
That is absolutely beautiful advice. And I really like this idea of, and you're right, there are structures that work against the idea of innovation. And you can I add to your, can I add to your response?
Please, yeah, I would welcome you to.
I think we have to also think about this metacognitively as lifelong learners. And the one phrase that we should continue to evaluate and resist saying is, we've always done it that way.
It's the death of any idea.
But we've always done it that way.
We've always done it that way. It's probably it's like nails on a chalkboard to I just can't tolerate it. Higher ed is an ocean liner, right? Like most universities are these big cruise ships that are so slow to turn or change. They're just set in their pathway and they can't really swerve very far to the left or the right. There are some schools who have built agility into the process where they can be a little speedboat and they can zip around and change direction on a dime. And those are the schools that are really going to thrive in this environment, because higher ed is under fire. My trip to Washington, D.C. last month at ACE, I heard Nicholas Kent, who's the undersecretary for the Department of Education, underneath Secretary McMahon, underneath President Trump. And the message that they delivered, the Department of Ed delivered at ACE was, you should move through the stages of grief as quickly as possible and get from, denial to anger to acceptance, because President Trump is going to take apart the Department of Education and is going to, in their words, return power to the states. But really, what that's cue for is to kind of decentralize and disorganize higher ed and remove support for really critical programs like Hispanic serving institutions or DEI initiatives. All of that stuff that machinery is being taken apart piece by piece in a way that I don't think it will snap back. And I don't think higher ed should play the victim, because as we've talked about in this episode, we have bad outcomes. And we should look in the mirror and say we can do some things better. But higher ed right now has never been under the microscope as much as it is currently. And so to say we don't need to change, and to say that we don't need to innovate, and to say that we don't need to kind of make rapid decisions that serve students that has better outcomes, that's crazy in this environment. The schools that are able to innovate, that are willing to innovate, that have the risk tolerance and the political will, are the ones that will survive what is a reckoning that's happening. So it's like a triple whammy. Higher ed is under fire because it has bad outcomes. The funding model is falling apart. So you're seeing universities close, in some cases 2 a week. 2 a month. No, 2 a week. About 100 universities a year will close. And then all this federal pressure to remove DEI offices, to defund certain programs that higher ed really relied on, and to strip research funding, which is critical. So now's the time, people. Now is the time to make change and to really get lean and mean and have outcomes that really serve your student population.
So, Brett, thank you for that, helping us to look forward. And speaking about looking forward, what's next for you as an individual with the podcast EdUp Innovation, or for San Francisco Bay University, that you would like to share with the community, and how might the community engage with that work that's forthcoming?
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Both generous questions here. The podcast, I'm going to keep doing it. I keep learning every day. I love it. I have Paul LeBlanc coming on from Southern New Hampshire to talk about AI, some other really cool guests lined up. And across the sector, I have folks working in community college. I have folks working at R1s and everything in between, faculty, presidents, people from associations. So super excited to continue those conversations. I may get a little more sophisticated with the tech now that I'm comfortable. I have about 20 episodes and I have about 3,000 followers on Spotify. So people are listening, which is flattering. So super excited for that. I've also been doing a lot of writing lately personally. I have a chapter of a book coming out that's published on general education, that's published with my colleague Malia Spofford Xavier from Keuka College on the Gen Ed revision we did there in collaboration with colleagues from Oregon State University. So that's coming out pretty soon. I've been asked to write the foreword to a book on institutional effectiveness. It's a book specifically on partnering with vendors. Writing the foreword is really a gift because I get my name on the cover of the book without having to write a chapter. It's a guilty privilege. And so KP Powers, who's also another EdUp podcast host, she hosts EdUp Institutional Effectiveness, asked me to write the foreword to her book with my colleague David Chase here. So I'm super excited for that. I'm working with a dean at Colby Sawyer College in New England to write an article on faculty who either through course releases or other kind of fractional buyouts are moving into administrative work for ACAD. So I'm writing another article there. I've got an article right now that's being shopped around to Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle. So probably 4 big publications coming out. And, for me personally, I love doing it. I love higher ed. I love thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it, podcasting about it. I love the work, and I'm really privileged to be able to come every day and think about this stuff and write about it. So that's what's on tap for me. The other thing I want to talk about, I guess, quickly is at SFBU, as we spoke about, I'm going to sometime in 2026, we'll make an announcement that we're launching an online MBA, and that at national scale. So all 50 states, maybe not initially, but eventually all 50 states. And that MBA will be one of the most affordable in the country, probably under $10,000 for the whole degree. And it's going to use AI in a very unique way to really give students a superior learning experience to what a typical online degree has. We've put about 16,000 human hours into the design of this MBA. And the AI tech that we're using is really cutting edge. It's proprietary. And I think students are going to love interacting with it. So that, professionally, that's where I'm spending an awful lot of my time right now.
So Brad Fuster, thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where we seek to advance educational excellence and equity.
Jacob, thank you. It's been an awesome conversation here at 7 a.m. The sun has come up throughout the course of our conversation, but it's a beautiful way to start the Friday. I appreciate you, your podcast, the work you do, shining a light on folks who are committed to equity in higher education. And thank you, sir, for the great conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience Network of educational podcasts.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emma Worthington, a PhD student of Fordham University's School Psychology program. And we want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com, where you can leave an email or a voice message. That's edupxe.com.
And we encourage you to participate in our XE listening tour by listening to the educational stories of others and sharing your thoughts with us at edupxe.com. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, YouTube, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.